if Diablo 3 was kind of going more for like almost a Lord of the Rings, kind of big, bombastic, the world ending and there's lots of colors and explosions and stuff, Diablo 4 feels more like Game of Thrones. Alex, a little while back, you got onto a soapbox about the Diablo 4 closed beta.
Yeah, we talked about that.
We did, and it was so well received by the people. They just really loved that. And no notes. We have moved past that, and now I get to have an opinion because we had the open beta weekend.
Yes, we did.
To talk about that because I played myself. So I have had hands-on experience. I hear you also were in the open beta as well. Or
yeah, I wanted to see how it was doing since the closed beta,
which is something I wanted to talk to you about. So I have very strong opinions. I'm gonna say right up at the front. I don't know how strong an opinion they are, but I did want to talk about my experience with it, wanted to get your opinion on it, so let's jump into that. So for people who are not aware, Diablo 4 is going to be coming out in June, but this was the open beta weekend just so that millions and millions of people could come in to try and experience the early build, where we were in the first area. I don't really remember what the name of the area was, but it's...
it's fine.
It's the tundra area.
There's actually a lot of like small towns in the game instead of like the 3 ones that were in Diablo 3.
You had told me about that, but I was surprised by it, and I was trying to kind of like wrap my head around like going from one village to another, because in every Diablo game I've ever played, there's like a centralized town, and then you go out from the town and the rest of it is just hack and slash everything. And in Diablo 4, they start you off in the one little town with the crazy zealot people, and and then you go to like the main town, I guess, but then there's also all of these smaller areas that also have vendors and quests and sub-quests and everything like that. I personally liked it just because it made the world feel more lived in. Like from an atmospheric point of view, I never really understood why every single area of Diablo had this one town, and then it's just nothing. This made it feel a little bit more like an actual world where you go to different places. The other thing that I noticed right away from like Diablo 3 is tonally it feels very different.
Yes.
And it not just in the look, but just in the way that it's all presented, feels a little like darker and more sullen than 3.
Yes, which I went over a bit, talking about in the closed beta.
Right. Now, me personally, I don't necessarily have a problem with that. I noticed it very prominently. Like, I guess if I could explain it, like, if Diablo 3 was kind of going more for, like, almost a Lord of the Rings, kind of big, bombastic, the world ending, and there's lots of colors and explosions and stuff, Diablo 4 feels more like Game of Thrones. It's, like, dirty and gritty, and people are dying all over the place, and the world is in despair, and you don't know if there's any way to solve the problem that's going on. So just from the aesthetic point of view, I liked it. I understand your comment about the colors being washed out, because there is a certain washed out quality to it. However, I did like the level of detail in all of the maps and the world that they put in. If you really look at it, there's like the tracks of mud where you can see where the carts have gone by on the streets. Yeah. And if you step over them, your footprints show up in the tracks. The level of detail in the stonework and the little tiny stuff that if you really look at it close enough, you're like, boy, they probably didn't need to put that level of detail on it, but...
Yeah, I do feel nice. Like they made the color palette just a little bit more vibrant. Like, it's not super bright and colorful, but I feel like at least it's... Not that I'm going straight from the closed beta to the open beta and looking at it, but it didn't feel quite as drab.
It's not as muted.
Yeah.
Maybe that might have been something that they modified since closed beta too. Character customization. So 3 had a little bit of character customization, but not a ton. I mean, I think you could choose some image stuff for your clothing, right? You could do some transmog stuff.
That's about it.
That's about it.
You could pick a male or female character, and then you could pick.
Yeah.
Like you could transmog and then dye your outfit.
And you could dye your outfit, yeah. So this one does a little bit more. You can actually do more with your facial features and prominent markings and everything like that to try and differentiate your character from other characters.
Yep. Hair, eyes, tattoos.
Yep, all of that. And then anything that you've broken down for different pieces of clothing, you can use as a transmog item to change the clothing itself. And then you can dye individual pieces of clothing around and stuff like that. It's not nearly as detailed as some of the RPGs that I've seen. Compared to maybe a Fallout, that kind of franchise, it's not as detailed. However, I don't necessarily mind that because there is a point where character editors get to a level where I spend way too much damn time trying to make the nose right or something like that. And they don't really do that. They just kind of give you a series of options for a few of the main characteristics, and then they let you on your way so that you're not bogged down with it. They can say, here's some options. It's not a Cheesecake Factory menu. It's not that. So I don't mind it, but I did like that there was more customization than in previous Diablos. Now, this is the thing I wanted to ask you about, though. Skill trees. I remembered when you were talking about the closed beta, you had played, what was it, a Necromancer and a Druid and a Barbarian? I think you tried those? Okay. So I wanted to try... I tried the Rogue and the Sorcerer this time. Oh, okay. Because, see, when you had said that those were the 3, I was like, well, I'll probably try a Necromancer anyway because I like Necromancers, and I will try a Sorceress because I wanted to see the Spellcasters. I wanted to try something different. So that's what I did. I got my Necromancer to level 25, so yay me. And by that point, I had all legendary gear, and I had done the extra quests and everything. That was the primary class that I played. I was under the impression that the skill tree was more like a sphere. That's what I thought it was. But it's not. It's like a tech tree, where I put in a certain number of points after you have a few options, and then you unlock the next one, and there's a few different options. That's an interesting change. I like that better than 3, because in 3 you didn't really get to choose much except what was equipped.
Well, yeah, 3 wasn't much of a skill tree. It was just hey, you have abilities, pick them.
Yeah, pick them to equip. It's more like 2, but 2 would have you go down different sorts of tech trees to get the better abilities in those trees. This is a little bit more compartmentalized, where you can, I could take with the Necromancer a bone spell at the start. And then when I get to the second tier, I'd say, I want to take a shadow ability this time. And if I wanted to do something the next time, maybe I could take something that does decay damage, something like that. It's not so much like, you go down this tree of all the spirit or bone spells. I can pick and choose them as I go down that tree. And the only thing that I need to unlock it is to put a number of points into my overall skill tree. So it's a little bit more customizable as to what you're using. I'm sure there's going to be some min-maxers that go, no, you have to put them all into this. But it does give you the option of not, just taking everything from a certain tree to create a build. Yeah. So, I mean, I thought that was fine. I didn't get lost in the process. Sometimes there were, a bunch of options where I was looking at passives and stuff like that. And I was like, does this really help me out much at all? Because the passives don't give huge bonuses, honestly. There's, on the second tech tree of the Necromancer, you can take some points into a thing that's going to increase the amount of essence that you have. But it's like 3 points each. Yep. And like one of my little Spirit Reaper things costs like 20. So even if I put like 3 points into it, I've effectively gotten half a reaping. So that, yeah, I was a little surprised at how passives, which I usually like to put in on skill trees, were very weak in most cases.
I noticed in the sorcerer tree some of the like even just the abilities that had their like second and then third parts to the abilities.
Yeah.
Because you know how they're broken off to here's the main ability you're using, and then it has an option like the next passive ability for it.
Sure.
And one of 2 options.
Yeah.
Even some of those were kind of underwhelming for what the ability was. Like these seem very situational.
Yeah, I was surprised by that. Like, yeah, I took a firebolt, I think, for the first spell, because I was like, well, what I'll do, thinking, having played the Necromancer and seeing how these lines go, I'll take a fire spell to start, and then on the next line, I'll take a freezing spell or a lightning spell, and then I'll take a freezing spell. The next one after it is, you pierce through enemies that are already on fire. And it's like, all right, okay, that's cool, because like if they're in a line, and then I think the one after that is like 20%. There was options for like, hey, 20% of them get like weakness or something when they're on fire, and I'm like, all right, I don't really even know what that means, but cool. Bone Spear, same thing. I took that, but even the upgrades to Bone Spear were like very minimal damage increases past the first. There's definitely diminishing returns, which I don't know if that was so that people would focus on taking a lot of different skills instead of focusing in on certain ones, but it would have been nice to have a little bit more incentive to go down those little trees and, specialize in some certain things if you find something that you like. That would have been good. The idea of that compartmentalization for the skill tree too, where I can take different, elemental abilities, really helps with the sorcerer.
Yeah, I mean, I took Chain Lightning because...
Oh, me too.
That passive where it can actually bounce off yourself and increase your damage.
Yeah.
Quite nice.
Oh yeah, I did invest heavily into Chain Lightning. And I did realize that Chain Lightning does make a lot of encounters very easy. The Fallen come out, and you just like one Chain Lightning. Bye. Have a nice one. See you later. The Necromancer was great. Like, I really love the Necromancer. I like the whole Book of the Dead thing where you can customize the skeletons and your mages and eventually your golem when you get the golem. That was really neat. I like that a lot. Having just this big army that just walks around behind you, very cool. Blizzard has actually released some of the data from the open beta, I should say. And the Necromancer and the Sorcerer are the most played classes out of the 5. I'm basic. I played the 2 that everybody played.
So here's a question for you, though, because it's something we went over before, and people mentioned in the comments of the last video. How did you feel about the online play, as it were?
Yeah, I
because
did want to talk about that.
This one was, as much as people in the comments before had said you can play the whole storyline solo, this was an online experience. After you got to the first town, you were in a shared hub, and you could go out and do events in the world where other people were playing. Yeah,
so I think it's important to clarify whether it was not specific or not. When Alex... Hey guys, when Alex was saying that this one is an online experience, not like the other ones, he wasn't saying that it's not attached to BattleNet. He's saying that it's obvious that you're not playing alone. Like in 3, I played plenty of 3. You'd never have to see another person in 3. There's like not people around. There are hub areas where you can interact with others, similar to like in 2, where you could connect to BattleNet and you could do it as a multiplayer experience. 4, you're just with people. They're just there. They're wandering the world. And as far as I can tell, there is no way to turn that off. Like, you can make your profile private, but people will still come. People are still there. You'll be wandering around the landscape, and people will still be there. Which made me think that what they're trying to do is create more of, like, almost like an MMO experience. The way that it's presented with, people being able to randomly be in those servers, in those games, and also the Radiant quests, where you would be able to just, like, stumble upon this area where, oh, you gotta destroy all these totems, or, oh, we've got to destroy this, area boss, the Radiant quest bosses that just pop up.
To be fair, this could just be because it was open beta, and they wanted to stress test servers, which is one thing they do with open betas.
Yeah.
There could be, and people said that they said there would be a ability to play solo.
Great.
So if there's an ability to play solo later on
In the full game.
when they're not doing the betas, that'd be cool.
That would be cool. I can understand why they would want to do it online, because, if they were just testing people and downloaded the game and just played it on their set, they wouldn't be able to collect a lot of data. Sure. Okay, I can get that. But if I were to have a note, when you create a world like what they're doing with Diablo 4, where it does feel more sullen and more isolated and more gritty and realistic, having a bunch of other heroes running around doing quests all over the world that you just randomly stumble into kind of ruins that atmosphere for me. It no longer feels like, oh, this world is so desolate and there's so few people that can actually deal with Lilith and her demon army and stuff. No, there's like 50 dudes in the town right there. I'm thinking we're good. That's the reason why I'm really hoping that there's a single player experience where I'm not encapsulated around other characters, where when I have to deal with a demon, I have to deal with the demon. I have to deal with this, because, there were plenty of times where it was like, oh, you went into those ruins, oh, big demon dude, you gotta slay him in the time limit. But it so happened to be at the same time that, like, 2 other high-level players were wandering through, and by the time I got there, like, the monster's practically dead already, and it's like, wow, the stakes really were not that high.
Yeah. I'll let you know that from playing World of Warcraft and having similar things like that with the world quest system.
Yeah.
One thing players do and have an easy time doing because there's enough data for it is they have timers.
Oh.
All these world bosses and these monsters are on timers, and they respawn after a set amount of time.
Yes.
So what they'll do is they'll sit there.
Yep.
And they'll wait until the monster respawns,
and
then murder it.
Yeah.
And then they'll move on to the next ones, and they'll just do this daily.
Considering how easy it was for me to get, like, legendary gear by the time I got to 25, I don't really know how much you need to sit there. One thing, though, that I did like about the system with gear and customization was when you do get the legendary gear and you have, like, specific skills, like the abilities that they have on there, if you want to break down the item and keep it and put it on another piece of, like, legendary gear, you can do that, which was very helpful. Some of them are whatever, but then some of them are, like, you build your character around the skill. I had one for the Necromancer where, like, my Blood Mist ability could explode corpses when you went over them, and when you did that, it also reduced the timer on the corpse explosion every time that it happened. So what I would do is you could just walk up, start shooting some of the little guys, kill them off, then go to Blood Mist form, wander over the pile of the corpses, create about 100 explosions. Your timer then completely resets at that point right afterward, and you've dealt massive damage to more characters who have probably also died, left more corpses so that you explode those too. And I was able to get a lot of achievements for, like, kill so many enemies in one, in a certain amount of time or whatever. very, very quickly. So some of those abilities are really good, and so they allow you to, break down the item, but keep that ability for better gear. There's, still crafting, like there was in 3, so that you can upgrade certain pieces of gear, several levels. So they took some of the interesting things, I think, for a user interface standpoint that 3 had. But I was very happy that they seemed to be trying to emulate more of 2 than 3 in the structure of the game, because I like 2 more.
Yeah.
To be completely
2 is a
honest.
classic, so...
2 is a classic. 2 was always very, very good. And it feels like they're trying to, in the way they're doing skills, in the way they're doing classes, in the way they're presenting the world, they're trying to emulate 2 far more than they were trying to emulate 3. Even the classes themselves are very similar to 2. Like, we've got the Barbarian, we've got the Necromancer, we've got the Druid, we've got the Sorcerer. I didn't play the Rogue, but it felt like it was kind of like the Amazon and the Assassin
It was like a mixture of them.
Right, because you got traps, but also long-range bows and stuff like that, yeah.
Yeah, you had, like, daggers you could dual wield, but you also had bows and crossbows, so...
Right. Having played all 5, somebody in the comments is going to get me, playing all 5 of the classes now, did you have a personal favorite, and what did you like about them?
Necromancer's pretty fun, because Army of Undead that you can customize is always interesting.
Love the Necromancer, yeah.
Barbarian was interesting, and it's probably going to be one of the meta classes. As much as it wasn't one of the top ones people played, I feel like the way you can customize and just expertise, like, single out one type of weapon.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
There's going to be some interesting, brutal builds. I don't think I spent enough time with the Druid.
Sure.
To see its potential unlocked.
Yeah.
And I definitely didn't spend enough time with the Rogue. Probably say Necromancer just because having an army of the undead is enjoyable. Or you could just not do an army and do a solo build.
Yeah, you can, in the Book of the Dead, they do give you the option to basically sacrifice, having the different things for getting passive bonuses for your character.
Yeah.
So, I didn't see the value of it, personally, because having the giant army of skeletons seemed like a much better deal than...
I'm sure there are builds that would benefit from it.
Like, when I played the Sorceress, I thought to myself, like, one... I was like, well, actually, a lot of these spells are very, very powerful, and you recover mana very quickly, so it's easy to continually cast spells. But then the other thing I noticed, and I was happy about, is a lot of the skills that you have are similar to the ones that the Sorceress had in 2. You have the Hydra
and Diablo 3's Wizard as well.
And the Wizard in 3. The Necromancer has a lot of spells that are very similar to previous spells. You're probably going to be right at home if you played previous Diablo games. I mean, it's Necromancer all the way for me. It always is. Every Diablo game I want to play the Necromancer anyway, so. Has the open beta changed your initial impressions from closed?
Yeah, it's a little bit more favorable, because they're not plopping you down in the middle of a town that you have no idea what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like they did in the closed beta.
Gotcha.
Like, you have that little bit of an intro. Like, it's kind of like the beginning of Diablo 3. You start outside town, you have to make your way to town, and then it kind of gives you this whole event that actually, like, fuck happened, you know?
Right. They give you a lot of lead-in before you get to the story itself.
So, closed beta had none of that. You just were plopped in, you didn't get any of the story. You know, it was like... which felt off. It's like, I don't know what's going on at all, so this doesn't... Like, from a gameplay standpoint...
Yeah.
It was... Mechanically, the combat and everything was fine, but I feel like most of the people that are going to be playing a Diablo game...
Yes.
...are hooked in because they're curious to see what they're doing with the story.
Right.
As fun as Diablo can be for a hack and slash, it's like there are plenty of other hack and slash games.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's been emulated to crap at this point.
You know, I want to know the continuation of the story from 3.
Right.
And 2.
Right.
Which is going on, not just hack and slash.
Yeah. And what I was impressed by, like, having played the main story part of the beta all the way through to the end, is, like, obviously the focus here is on Lilith and what's happening with Lilith in terms of Sanctuary and all of that. But what I thought was very interesting as, like, a subtext for the story is it seems like they're going to talk a lot about kind of the downfall of the Herodrum, and that in some ways, this might actually be more about a story of them.
I'm sure you are aware that the guy you meet, Lorath.
Oh, Lorath. Yeah.
The Herodrum that you meet at the beginning of the game, he was in Diablo 3.
Yeah, he looked familiar, but I couldn't remember. It's been so long since I played 3.
He was the Herodrum dude that is hanging out with Tyrael.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And Tyrell's explaining what the Herodrum was and whatnot. In 3, to him, and he's the guy with the polearm in town. And so you meet him, and it's years later.
Well, similarly, like, 3 took place, like, what, 20, 30 years after the first... after the second game, because the Barbarian is just a lot older. It's not something that I would necessarily... I'm not going to pre-order it, like, and I have no intention of rushing out to get it when it first releases, but I thought, as far, if for a Diablo game, and for the experience that you'd be looking for Diablo, I think it's going to service that. I think if you liked previous Diablo games, this is going to be more of it, and I could definitely see, like, exploring the world more at some point. It would have been good to have maybe a little bit of a peek at some of the other areas, just to see the differentiation in terrain and, biomes that it has, because, it's a lot of tundra. It's a lot of tundra.
You want to go back to Karast?
Yeah, always. I like that it felt a little bit more interconnected, not just like go to Act 1 or 2. It felt like a more interconnected world that you get to explore. It served the purpose that it was trying to serve, which was not just to do beta testing, but also to give people the idea, like, yeah, this is the game. Don't you like the game? I even got a notification, as I'm sure you did, letting me know that, thank you for participating in our beta, and here are some unlockable rewards if you pre-order for the Wolf Pack and stuff, since you reach level 20. It's like, cool. Probably not enough of an incentive for me to pre-order, or to order right away, but I could definitely see it being a huge release, and it will probably sell incredibly well when it comes out in June. So, yeah, if anyone out there had played in the beta or had any thoughts about Diablo 4, what do you think about it? What do you think's going to happen with it? And right now, where would you rank it in terms of the other Diablo games? Because it's probably behind 2 for me, but it's definitely better than the first one. And I can see it being significantly better than 3, for me at least. So, let us know in the comments down below.